Welcome, welcome everyone, and thank you for connecting to this webinar on the future of repair, focusing on the new EU regulation on phones and tablets. Before getting to our today's topic, I need first to go through some practicalities to make sure you can attend this webinar as smoothly as possible. So first of all, be aware that this event will be recorded. Also, simultaneous interpretation in German is provided. You can switch to German via clicking on the button on the left of this slide, the one looking like a globe. Wenn Sie auf das Logo klicken, das wie ein Globus aussieht, können Sie zur deutschen Übersetzung wechseln. Also, with all due respect to interpreters that we thank very much for their help today, please keep in mind that interpretation might not be a perfectly accurate translation of the views of our speakers today, especially for what concerns technical and legal aspects. Therefore, please do not quote anything that the interpreters will say. I will also invite you to write the questions you want to ask our guest speakers via the Q&A function. If you can think of any question or realize that the question you wanted to ask has already been phrased by someone else, please upvote the questions that are already asked. This will help us identify the most relevant ones, as it probably won't be possible to ask all the questions, unfortunately. I will be your moderator today, but I also represent ECOS, an international environmental NGO advocating for better policies, laws, and technical standards. We are technical experts and represent a network of members with the aim to defend the environment at the tables where complex rules are decided. Our successes include ambitious eco-design rules, stronger energy and material efficiency standards, and progress toward the right to repair in Europe. The EU officially recognizes us as a key stakeholder who ensures that standards serve society. And we are also a co-founder of the Right to Repair Europe campaign and a co-lead of the Cool Products campaign. We are here today because repair is constantly gaining attention, as its key role in the circular economy is clear for everybody, saving resources and limiting the environmental impacts of waste generation. Environmental NGOs and repairers are constantly pushing for new policies that promote eco-design, prevent anti-repair practices, and facilitate repair. This includes, for example, easier to disassemble products and availability of spare parts and repair information. Our final goal is to reach a universal right to repair. During the previous years, the EU has worked on different regulations that have contributed to make repair more common and easy to operate, therefore improving the repairability and reliability of electronics. Among these are the phones and tablets regulations, published in the official journal of the EU at the end of August. ECOS, the Right to Repair Europe Coalition, and Deutsche Umwelthilfe invite you today to explore together what will be the impact of this new regulation on different sectors. For this occasion, we have invited estimated guests who will illustrate the different aspects of this new regulation. Our first speaker will be Davide Polverini, policy officer in the European Commission for more than 10 years. He is in the team in charge of the implementation of the Ecodesign Directive, and among other types of products, work on mobile phones and tablets. He will give us a presentation on what this regulation actually contains. Davide, I invite you to share your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody, and thank you for this invitation. Just to check if the audio and video are fine.
Everything is working well. Thank you, Davide.
Perfect. So this presentation is meant to be as an introduction to the webinar. So to walk you through the content of these two recently published regulations about the eco-design and the energy labeling of mobile phones and tablets. We only have 10 minutes, so I will try to condense a lot of messages here, and obviously available for any follow-up questions because there are many concepts. This is again an introduction. Should you then, after this presentation, be willing to have more information, please refer to the legislative text. I will point you to. You can address us specific comments in writing, also because, as said by Mathieu, also thanks to the interpreters, we are able to reach an extended public. On the other side, that might be, let's say, uncertainty or not 100% precise translation. So it is important to say that what I'm showing here is introductory, and let's say not always, may not always be 100% legally binding. For this, we have the regulation. So in general terms, we are in the framework of eco-design and energy labeling. They are two among, I would say, the most renowned and effective pieces of legislation at European Union side for what concerns the environmental impact on products. They apply on products at the moment of the placing on the market, and eco-design was having the historical focus on the energy efficiency, same as well for the energy labeling, which gradually was accompanied with the circular economy action plans with the attention on material efficiency. Nowadays, we regulate with eco-design and energy labeling basically almost all middle-sized and bigger-sized appliances we have at home, plus business-to-business products, plus ICT products, such as the mobile phones and tablets. The focus on circular economy has been again has been gaining paramount importance in the last years, and I think the regulation we are seeing now on the mobile phones and tablets is perhaps the most articulated, the most complete example. Here we have just a chart of what has been delivered so far by eco-design on the field of circular economy for all the product groups. So work has already been done. Again, this regulation that I'm going to present now is certainly perhaps the most advanced and organic example. So we started from basically these 4 lines. The Circular Economy Action Plan 2020 was announcing regulatory measures for electronics and ICT, including mobile phones and tablets, for energy efficiency and durability, repairability, upgradability, maintenance, reuse, and recycling. So what we have been doing was exactly to translate in regulatory terms these commitments. It is a work that was started in early 2020 and has been concluded with a publication on the official journal of the European Union of the 2 regulations this August. And many of the stakeholders that have been following today, some of the stakeholders that were following the process are also around the virtual table today. So I thank everyone for the support and the interest so far in the initiative, because truly we really benefited from the feedback of everyone. So 4 product categories are covered. Mobile phones other than smartphones, so the old, let's say, feature phones, smartphones, tablets, and cordless phones. And for each of these 4 product categories, we have foreseen an extended set of requirements, again, exactly in line with what was the commitment in the Circular Economy Action Plan. There are few differences obviously related to the specificity of the products. The presentation is centered around smartphones, but you will see that it is the same for the other products, with some specific differences, in particular for cordless phones. And if needed, we can explain. So smartphones are, when one reads the scope, are obviously a subset of what we define as mobile phones, whereas the other are 2 different categories. To be noted that we are also clarifying the interface of what we define as tablet with the products in scope to the computer regulation, which is already another existing eco-design one, which is under review. So we have, first of all, and probably this is of interest for this public, requirements for the repair and reuse. The regulation is quite expanded on it. We have, in fact, first of all, requirements on the availability of spare parts. So the obligation will be that for manufacturers to make available for a number of years a set of components of spare parts for the products. Having seen here that we have two separate lists. One, it is for end users. So components that have to be available as spare parts for everyone. Others that should be made available specifically for professional repairers. In general, these are spare parts that have to be provided in singularly and not in assemblies, with a few exemptions. Plus, it is important to note, since now, the specific treatment we gave to battery. The battery, in fact, has to be made available to also end users and not only professional repairers, in case the manufacturer opts for what we call the repairability path. What does it mean? For the batteries, we give two possibilities. Either the battery is available as a spare part for everyone, and users and professional repairers. If, on the contrary, the manufacturer opts for a solution which makes what we call a durable battery, so a battery which is capable to withstand 1,000 charge and discharge cycles, plus the device is highly resistant to water and ingress protection. In this case, the battery can only be supplied to professional repairers. We also have an extensive list of information on repair and maintenance that has to be disclosed. And here you see listed. We try to condense basically all the type of information which are needed to perform the repair and maintenance information. To whom has this information to be disclosed? To professional repairers. We see here what is the definition of professional repairer as from the regulation, plus, again, in the regulation, the procedure to get this repair information. In essence, it's required for the professional repairer to basically be, let's say, to have these, yes, he or she, the professional repairer, has to show to get the technical competence to repair the products in scope to the regulation. It needs to be, let's say, having the necessary legal liabilities, and the fact that this technical competence is in the end of the professional repairer can be recognized by the manufacturer and or shall be accepted by the manufacturer if the professional repairer is member of an already existing official registration system that might be available in member states. There are also requirements to make available spare parts within a maximum delivery times for the first 5 years of 5 working days, in the remaining years, 10 working days. We have also requirements to indicate on a free access website the indicative pre-tax price of the spare parts. This was meant to be helpful, let's say, also for the user to get an understanding of how the prices might vary and might be. Obviously, this is indicative, so it's not then legally binding for the manufacturer to keep it over time. We have, again, under the head of the repairability requirements, the so-called requirements on disassemblability. We have, in line with, for those that are of you that are more acquainted to the eco-design world, we have defined, thanks to the already existing horizontal standards on material efficiency for eco-design, those under mandate 543, again, for those of you that are more into eco-design, we have defined a number of parameters and factors related to the repair process. The fasteners, the tools needed, the type of environment where the repair operation takes place, and the level of knowledge of the person performing the repair. So we have divided, let's say, the characteristics of the process for repair for spare parts that have to be available for professional repairers and for spare parts available to end users, defining for each of these two typologies the minimum levels of these type of, let's say, parameters. In essence, the concept is that spare parts that have to be available for end users must be basically more easily repairable. You see layman knowledge needed, possible in a used environment with no tools or tools supplied with a product or basic tools, and removable, resupplied, or reusable fasteners. Again, I'm sorry, I'm throwing you a lot of information, but the attempt is to try to give you an overview of the many requirements that we have. For the batteries, we have again this dual possibility of using the more or less stringent requirement or repairability, depending if the manufacturer has chosen for the more or not durable type of component. We then have the so-called requirements for preparation for reuse, which is basically to enable the possibility to have a second life for the device without endangering the, let's say, data privacy of the data stored in the device by the first user. We then have requirements on the replacement of those so-called serialized parts. The concept here is we allow the possibility, this is a practice done by some manufacturers, to have parts, as it's called, serialized, but if the manufacturer does so, the manufacturer shall give to the repairer the necessary means, software tools, firmwares, or others, to ensure the possibility to make the repair operation, and afterwards the full functionality of the product, and we devise the procedure for doing so. We have the extensive set of requirements on design for reliability. Very briefly, it's the fact that the device has to be resistant to accidental drops, the display has to be scratch resistant, and the device has to be protected from the ingress of dust and water. We have the minimum requirements on the battery endurance and on the battery management. Interestingly, we have requirements on the minimum number of years, these 5 years from the end of placement on the market of the products, for which the availability of security, corrective, and functionality updates has to be ensured by the manufacturer. So this is also another relevant requirement under the head of those called reliability. Very briefly, we have requirements on on the marking of plastic components, requirements on information related to recyclability of components in the framework of the WEEE directive, information requirement, but I want to briefly use the last minute for also showing you briefly the energy label that will be accompanying the products as of when also the eco-design requirements kick in, which I remember you, it will be as of June 2025. This is the label that product will have to exhibit at the point of sale. It contains the so-called class measure with an index, an energy efficiency index, which, without going into details, is meant to be an evaluation of for how long one can use the device, the smartphone or the tablet, doing a certain standard user duty cycle, and it's normalized per the voltage and capacity of the battery. There are the parameters in line with the eco-design, which sets the minimum levels of the ingress resistance to water and dust, the protection from accidental faults, the cycles, the number of charge and discharge cycles that the battery can withstand. And interestingly, we have the first example of repairability score. Developed with the GRC colleagues, we identified the priority components for smartphones and tablets that need repairing. We tried to we developed a quantitative index which takes into account all these parameters here. So the number of disassembly steps, the tools needed, the fasteners used, the available information, the availability of software. And we condense these in an index. So that's the index that will accompany the products. So again, I hope it was not too fast, but the idea was to really try to give you all the elements that are present in these two regulations, which again will kick in for mobile phones, for smartphones, tablets, and cordless phones as of June 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davide. I see One question is asked. So what recyclability requirements are set in this regulation, and are quotas for recycled content possible under the current ecodesign directive, or is this only possible under ecodesign for sustainable products regulation in the future?
The regulation, as I've shown, the regulation here has some recyclability requirements within. That are again mostly information requirements related to the dismantling of components and substances in scope to the WE. It is true that, if I understood correctly the question, there is also there will be focus on this under what it is the future of the eco-design directive, which is the SPR, the Eco-Design of Sustainable Products Regulation. Allow me to also mention that we started since a few weeks, and we had already the first stakeholder meeting, a study again within the scope of the current eco-design on, as we call it, critical raw materials, environmentally relevant and scarce materials, where recyclability aspects are also investigated.
Okay, thank you very much, Davide. There are other questions which popped up, but we have to switch to the panel debate now. If you still have time, please stay with us, Davide. And you can also maybe write answers to the questions which are asked in the Q&A directly, if you find the time. So thank you very much for having made the content of this regulation much clearer to our audience. Let me introduce our estimated panelists. So we are very happy to have with us Andrea Kotrowski, who is an expert on circular economy specializing in eco-design, batteries and waste reduction at Deutsche Umwelthilfe, a German organization fighting for nature conservation and committed to preserving biodiversity in Germany. We are also very happy to receive Claire Darmon, head of public affairs at Swappy, an online platform for buying and selling with refurbished smartphones. In her role, Claire focuses on e-commerce and sustainability issues, particularly eco-design and repair. We are also honored to welcome Thea Kleinmagd, who is Fairphone's circular material innovator. She fosters fair circularity and decreases the environmental footprint throughout the life cycle of smartphones. And last but not least, Hugo Valory, a policy lead at the Restart Project, a London-based charity fixing our relationship with electronics. Today, he will represent the Right to Repair Europe campaign. He has over a decade experience in encouraging people to repair their electronics and collecting data from community repair initiatives globally on recurrent barriers to repair. So I will start this panel debate with a very simple question that I invite you all to respond to, starting with Andrea. How do you expect these new regulations to influence the environmental impact of phones and tablets, as well as the life of EU citizens and the sectors you represent?
Yes, thank you, Mathieu. I hope you can hear me well. Okay, perfect. Yeah, the DOH, Deutsche Umwelthilfe, welcomes, of course, this eco-design and energy labeling rules on mobile phones and tablets. The new rules will bring significant benefits for the environment, but of course, there are still important gaps. If we look at the waste stream, e-waste is one of the fastest growing waste streams in the world. Only in 2021, we had 4.9 million tons of e-waste that was registered in the European Union, which also means that 4 million tons were still missing to fulfill the collection target. And why is that e-waste evolving? Well, this is mostly due to short-lived products which lose functionality and are mostly quickly replaced by a new device, as people, for instance, depend on their phone and need to get a new one quickly. And why do they break, or what is the problem? Well, mostly they are there's a non-repair friendly design. We have missing wear or spare parts, or the battery cannot be replaced. In addition, software updates might lead to changes in functionality and even to non-functionality of devices. If we look at the environmental impacts, there's especially, of course, high impacts in production of the devices. For instance, high fossil fuel energy demand, greenhouse gas emissions, resource depletion, and water consumption. And then wrongly disposed e-waste places a threat to the environment, releasing toxic chemicals and hazardous materials into the air and contaminating soil. Besides that, there was a recent study commissioned by Wertgarantie, a German insurer, that revealed that the non-repair of defective devices causes over 300,000 tons of electronic waste every year only in Germany, and that the production of new replacement devices generates additional 2,400,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year. So this can be avoided. And the new regulation, of course, sets a solid basis for addressing these environmental concerns. And we just heard from Davide that they introduce for the first time comprehensive circular economy provisions, setting minimum requirements, helping to extend the lifespan of devices, and thus enabling better resource efficiency, reducing impacts of manufacturing and disposal, and giving end users more information, as we saw, for instance, with the repair index. However, this is just the beginning, and there's still significant progress to be made. There's still limited access to spare parts and repair information to end users and repair cafes, for instance. We didn't touch upon the pricing of spare parts, which is crucial for the decision if a consumer wants to actually repair its device. And then independent repairers and refurbishers will still have to notify manufacturer and ask for repair authorization in case where parts are paired together through software. So from our perspective as an environmental NGO, our primary focus is, of course, to promote overall sustainability, durability, and material efficiency of all electronics, promoting waste prevention and reuse before recycling. We see that these regulations mark a significant step forward, not only for the electronics industry, but for environmental legislation as a whole. They set a benchmark for product-related regulations, emphasizing the importance of the eco-design requirements. However, the limited provisions also need to be solved to improve the associated impacts with electronics waste as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And Claire, what's your opinion about that?
Thanks, Mathieu. And thank you, Andrea. I think you've set the scene really, really well. And I can only agree to what you've just introduced. So I'm representing the refurbishment sector. And for us, the text is definitely a groundbreaking one in many ways. I mean, obviously, smartphones are very popular devices. So providing clear requirements was very much needed, considering that they've been in our hands for about 15 years and everybody has one, at least one, and many in their drawers. It's a text that we were waiting for a really long time. So it was really most welcome to actually see it materialize after so many years of intense work with the Commission and other parts and other regulators. Definitely some great improvements. We're very happy to see minimum requirements actually agreed and set in stone. However, definitely we have some concerns about some of the provisions. But like staying on the benefits, refurbishment is repair. So obviously for us, having clear requirements for our refurbishers to be able to have legal certainty on what can and cannot be done, having access to parts for a really long time, having the possibility to update the devices for longer periods of time, all of that contributes to keeping devices longer in the market. And we're seeing a huge appetite from consumers to buying refurbished and ensuring that devices are used for a longer time. However, to do that, we need to drive consumer trust and awareness in refurbishment. And we truly believe that this piece of legislation will help do that. Because by providing clear requirements that will apply across the market to all professionals, hopefully will increase the quality of repair across the board and incentivize more competition on quality. We do have concerns when it comes to serialization, unfortunately, and I think Andrea touched on it in her comments. The fact that there's still this authorization procedure. So for us being independent, having to call on the OEM and give them information about not only the device that will be repaired, but also the part that is being used, is actually giving OEM, we think, way too much detail and insights into businesses that are independent from them. So this poses questions from a competition standpoint. We hope we can get them clarified in the future, but at the moment where it stands, it's very unclear to see how refurbishers are going to be able to make use of that provision, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Claire. And now I will switch to Thea, who is presenting Fairphone. What would be the perspective of, we know is already a very progressive manufacturer.
Yes, thank you, Mathieu. Yeah, so Fairphone itself is on a mission to show that a market for ethical electronics is viable. That means both social and environmental factors. And that also means that we ourselves as a company will probably not face like crucial changes in the product design of our products. Because already, for example, our Fairphone 2 that was launched in like more than 7 years ago has been receiving, for example, software updates for more than 7 years. And now with the ecodesign directive, it is necessary that the updates will be received for 5 years after. And it was also our first fully user repairable phone. And we also always provided information and spare parts freely on our website. But that's, of course, as we know, this is not, let's say, how usually manufacturers are doing this. And this is why this directive is very important, that that also other manufacturers are really pushed more into that direction to make information available and to also prolong the software support and make the products more repairable. You could already now see during that discussion of the development of the ecodesign directive that manufacturers were trying out a bit more going towards repairability, and also the software promises were getting slightly longer. But mostly just for the models which were the flagship models, and for the like cheaper models, it was still staying the same of like 2 years of software support, maybe 3 years of software support. And I think this is something where this directive can really help, that all models, no matter if they were cheap or expensive, that they receive the software support which is needed to keep them in use for longer. Yeah, and yeah, I also feel in terms of design that many manufacturers kind of will have to make a step backwards, because 10 years ago, phones were repairable, or like you could at least replace usually the battery. But then there was a race for that the phones were evolving to be sleek and as light as possible. And that basically meant that manufacturers started gluing everything together and also promoting fast replacement cycles, so that it didn't make sense to even think about repair because it was so expensive. And now also during the development, you could also see that manufacturers were starting internally, often they were not communicating about it, but to make slight adjustments so that they could check if how their phones can become more repairable. And for example, iFixit declared also on for the iPhone 14 that it would be the most repairable Apple handset since 2016's iPhone 7. So this is why I think that some manufacturers will kind of take a step back to what they have been doing earlier. But of course, there's then still a long way to go, because I think there are also like these few problems that have been already mentioned before. And I think one of the biggest problems is the battery, because if only professional repairers can replace the battery of a phone if certain other criteria are met. So the 1,000 charging cycles that Davide was also mentioning, above 80% capacity. But our Fairphone 4 did that already, or was reaching that without a problem already in 2021. So we have by now a newer model. So I don't think that if a manufacturer wants to go for the way of still continuing gluing in the battery and making the battery replacement only possible for repairers, this regulation is not really a barrier to do so, because it has been already kind of a standard 2 years ago. So, and that will also make the repair more expensive. And we once benchmarked our repair costs, which is user repairability versus other manufacturers, and that it makes it 60% cheaper, our repair, by simply being able to quickly click in a new battery compared to if you hand in the phone to a professional repairer. And that is the other big issue, I think, that the costs are not covered in the directive, but I think that has been mentioned now already several times before. And so by that, a manufacturer, I feel, can simply still determine if repair is going to happen or not by determining how easy a professional repairer can exchange the battery, or that the user cannot repair it, and then with the price of the spare parts. So And yeah, since the only way to effectively reduce the environmental impact of the phones is to keep them in use for longer, yeah, I think it is really dependent on which way they go from this directive in making the battery replaceable by the user or not, if the directive will have a very high impact, because the battery is more or less maintenance. It is normal that the capacity decreases over time.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And from the perspective now of individual repairers, DIY repairers, Hugo, what do you think this regulation will change if I want to repair my smartphone on my own?
Right. Well, first of all, I hope you can hear me okay. Guess what? There was a repair problem just this morning on the device I was using. Can you? No. You can't
now
hear.
It's a bit better. Now it's a bit better. Yeah.
Sorry. Apologies. I'm experiencing.
No, it's perfect.
Is it better now? Yeah. Experiencing exactly a repair problem. My main device, my laptop, not a phone, broke down this morning. So I'm talking to you from a not perfect device. But anyway, everything that I agree with everything that's already been said. I would add that in many cases, the fact that some spare parts are kept away from consumers as well as repair cafes and restart parties and all community repair initiatives is completely unjustifiable. In the case of smartphones, we've seen that these products are among the most popular that are brought to community repair initiatives, events across Europe, thousands and thousands of them. And in fact, the data from repairing these devices has been used to advocate during the process. And I can share here that during one meeting with representatives of manufacturers, we had to use the data that we had about how quite a number of community repair initiatives were replacing the charging port of a device, which manufacturers maintained was a part that didn't need to be made available, not even to professional repairers. Why am I saying this? Because from a campaigning perspective, we started the European Right to Repair campaign back in 2019. And it took just exactly 4 years to get this legislation out, and it will apply to devices from June 2025. So approximately 6 years on, and it's a great improvement, of course, particularly because devices will not only be a bit more repairable, but also more durable. I agree with Thea that maybe some devices already meet the criteria listed there, but in general, it's certainly an improvement if screens will sustain more drops before they break, reducing the chance that something needs to be repaired, or if many batteries might last long enough so that people don't need to think about replacing them for a little bit longer. So reducing the cases where repair is even needed is certainly possible, and it shows that this doesn't come at the expense of repairability in many cases, which has been traditionally a big point by manufacturers trying to say, well, if you want a durable device, it cannot be repairable. On the software side, I find it quite amusing that just in September, a few days before or after the legislation finally got published and made official, Google launched the latest iteration of the Google Pixel, and for the first time agreeing to 5 years of software security updates. Guess what? Exactly in line with the legislation that's passed, which means it's possible. Sadly, it wasn't possible with the device I'm currently using, which is by them and designed software-wise by probably the same team. So it shows that legislation does help and make a big change. I warn, well, some problems ahead are exactly as Thea was suggesting. Are products actually more repairable, or do they just tick a box so that they fit with the legislation? We're already seeing cases of companies, manufacturers trying to jump on board the right to repair movement by saying that their new device is very repairable just because they make some spare parts available to the public. And I think we'll have to become more careful about how this gets assessed effectively, because it's one thing if a device is designed to be easily repairable. It's a completely different thing if the parts are indeed available, let alone a prohibitive cost, but we'll talk more about this, I'm sure. But if the device takes 1 hour to disassemble to replace the battery, it has a big cost, whether it's to be repaired by an individual, a community repair initiative, or by a professional repairer that might rightly so charge for his time or her time.
Thank you very much, Hugo. And actually, you saying that this legislation already has an impact on the manufacture of new products or the service provided by manufacturers. It leads me to the point of like, what are maybe like going beyond the regulations on phones and tablets? What do you think could be the legislative initiatives led in parallel by the EU that could help make phones, but also laptops, printers more repairable? Andrea, maybe you want to answer that. So basically, do you agree? And do you agree that we need a universal right to repair? And what would be the next steps to achieve it?
Yes, thank you for the question, definitely. Well, the thing is, as we now discussed all these provisions of the regulation, which already sets environmental and sustainable sound direction, we still see there's one crucial aspect missing in granting people the universal right to repair, but also within legislative processes, and when we talk about climate action and reducing environmental impacts, and that is time. We see that currently the Commission is taking the approach to go through product by product, defining eco-design requirements for each product. However, this takes a lot of time. To ensure a quick reduction of environmental impacts and then also a better universal right to repair in regards to the growing numbers of electronics that we put on our markets every day and that contribute to e-waste, we must recognize that more horizontal requirements are needed that are directly obligatory for all electronics. So what do I mean by horizontal requirements? It's like a kind of common standards, minimum requirements that allow like a set of rules for all electronics, such as making sure they last longer, that they can be fixed, and also that several parts can be reused to save resources. So this way, no separate provisions have to be made for every different electronic device. It saves time and it grants the universal right to repair earlier. Maybe if I may, just as a side note, we also with the DOH and 32 European environmental associations and repair groups called upon the Commission to introduce these horizontal eco-design requirements to achieve resource efficiency for all electrical and electronic equipment, and to grasp the potential environmental benefits of those devices that are even not yet under legislative scope.
Thank you, Andrea. Claire, any reaction?
Sure, thanks. I think eco-design, yes, definitely it's a big pillar of the right to repair, but ultimately, I think this is all down to market dynamics. And we need to look at the flip side of eco-design, which is, consumer protection and how the market is operating at the moment. So from that point of view, to me, the universal right to repair means, how can we incentivize consumers to choose repair over replacement? And that directly feeds into, how can we provide consumers with quality yet affordable repair from the provider of their choice. So bottom line, this is a question of, multiplying service providers on the ground so that consumers can have access close to where they are. Doesn't have to be in a big city. Everybody should be able to seek repair wherever they are. And that is quality and affordable. And for that, we really need to focus on affordability of parts. And maybe something that hasn't been raised by my co-panelists, but we need to look a lot deeper into compatible parts, and the role, you know, stepping away from the legislation always referring to original or manufacturing parts. So what do you know, secondhand, pulled original, as we call them, or compatible third-party parts play in that market is very critical, and unfortunately isn't yet recognized in legislation horizontally. We need to create more competition between independent service providers and affiliated repairers, because to the point that I was making earlier, in order for people to choose repair, they need to trust the quality of it. And to do that, we need to drive the quality of repair by providing more competition in the market. We're hoping we can use ecodesign, but also other pieces of legislation like promoting the repair of goods that's currently going through the European institutions to actually move those lines in that direction. And one final point, you know, beyond the use of compatible parts, we need to be very serious about addressing anti-repair techniques. And by anti-repair techniques, I'm primarily focusing on, you know, part pairing through software serialization. Unfortunately, this started with batteries, but we are seeing the practice now being extended to so many critical parts of tablets and smartphones. And unfortunately, the use of software is now becoming the main blocker for independent service providers. And there is proof out there. We don't have enough data, as I understand it, to address it entirely from a legislative standpoint. And I really hope that, you know, we can address it once and for all when we have an opportunity to either revise this text or by setting, you know, horizontal requirements like were mentioned before. I think it's really important that we deep dive into those practices to ensure that everybody in the market has a fair chance to compete and offer good quality services to consumers.
Thank you very much, Claire. And can we benefit from Sia's reaction now?
Yeah, so I would wish, of course, that all manufacturers will choose for the user replaceable battery, and that would mean that maintenance of the device can be done on the spot and that it is also affordable, but that's unclear to date with the current legislation. But I think it's also really important because of that to then keep observing the other legislative processes which are currently happening, because there are also some promising developments on the proposal for the new repair rules that has now recently also been adopted by the EU Parliament. Yeah, so we will see how this is going to develop, but I think, and I really hope that it is indeed covering the pricing of the spare parts and of the part pairing that has been mentioned previously. At the same time, we then also need to look at the consumers, that they actually really repair their phone. And this is really a mindset change which needs to happen there, because right now it is absolutely accepted that phones break down after 3 years. And it needs to become the norm that users don't think of a new device in the first place, but of repair. And we see from our customer base that even although they chose at first for a phone which you can easily repair, but they sometimes really forget about it. Like we get then complaints after 2 or 3 years that the battery doesn't last long enough for them. And of course, if they contact us on that, we will tell them, hey, you can change the battery. It's not expensive, so no problem with that. But we really notice that this is a problem that people forget about, that this problem is actually easily solvable. And this is also why we are now starting to send out reminders after a certain amount of time that our customers have their phone, just in case that they do feel that, for example, their battery lifetime doesn't last them long enough anymore, that they can actually exchange the battery. And these small things, getting in touch with your customers again, I think this is something what I would wish what the industry would also be doing proactively in the future, so that all manufacturers really also push or nudge their users to actually repair and remind them of that spare parts are available. instead of pushing the newest phone model to them, which is still possible, of course.
Yeah, maybe it's something actually we could be informed on when we're buying a new phone. Like, have you considered repairing your old phone? Is it still actually working? Like, Hugo, also, do you want to react to how to reach a universal right to repair?
Yeah, first, just a comment on what's just been said. It's not surprising that people kind of forget about the fact that something might even be repairable when they're bombarded with marketing suggestions to upgrade all of the time. Who hasn't received a call from a phone operator to just upgrade at an incredibly discounted price? Why is this? I mean, there's actually overproduction of all of these products that try to make it into the market, and finding all kinds of tactics to convince people that it's already time to upgrade. So let's keep that in mind. And that's why, as part of our campaign, I mean, obviously I'm from the Restore Project, but there's plenty of other organizations that support community repair initiatives to become the norm again, and actually being in our high streets, in our communities, promoting and showing the repair not only should be the main option, but is very possible and often also fun, is an important aspect of this. But repair, as in user repair, is not for everyone necessarily, and that's why we need to make sure that repair options are available to everyone. That's what a universal right to repair means, that repair should be accessible to everyone. No one has to repair their own device themselves if they don't feel like that's their option, and it should be affordable. And how do you make it affordable? First of all, there are shortcomings even in the current right to repair proposal that certainly it's a step in the right direction, but it limits the most exciting proposals of requiring the manufacturers have to provide a repair service beyond the guarantee to just a few product categories. And the same people that want their smartphones and washing machine repair also want their headphones, their kitchen mixers, their vacuum cleaner, and many other products. And most of these are not going to be covered by these consumer rights aspects of right to repair. The second thing is the affordability. So in that sense, clearly it's a problem that at European level, the repair index does not take into account the price of spare parts. And we said it many times, but the JRC didn't find a way to include this criteria. So we have a case of taking a French legislation and making it worse by creating an index that doesn't take the cost of actually getting the repair done into sufficient consideration. The second thing is something that's promising in the Right to Repair initiative currently discussed, of shedding light on the importance of making repair affordable also by creating repair funds. They already exist in some countries. And to us, the most promising aspect is, again, what's coming out of France, of using some of the funds currently collected as part of extended producer responsibility to help reduce the cost of repairing the products that we already have. Because otherwise, most other legislation only look at potentially making repairability more suitable for future products that people yet have to buy. But what about all of the things that are already on the market and already in our homes? Can we slow down the rate of consumption by and creating less e-waste by ensuring that people can already repair what they have? Lastly, extending the range of products covered by legislation. I mentioned it already, but it goes even beyond what we've said so far. It's making sure that there are no barriers, including, as Claire said, the use of reused parts or compatible parts, secondhand parts. It needs to be transparent. Of course, people should feel the trust that they're told that a part is compatible or secondhand. Fair enough that a device, when you switch it off next time, it says that that's a compatible part. But there is no reason why that should perform in any different way by way of software limitation. And I think most people still don't understand that when we are worried about parts pairing, we are worried about a practice where a manufacturer deliberately switch off a camera with a software update because it's not the exact unit that they installed in that device. And this, we cannot let that happen if we want an open, transparent, competitive, and affordable repair sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hugo. Davide Polverini wanted to react after the end of these two questions that I asked you. So, Davide, I will invite you to turn on your camera. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, very briefly, a few reactions to the comments I heard. Let's see. Perhaps it sounds obvious for those of you around the virtual table that were following the process since the start. Please consider, as a general comment, that this is today a very friendly audience towards repairability and circular economy aspects. This is not always the case, meaning the regulation in the way you see it is the result of a process of consultation and taking into account the comments of all stakeholders, which we had to do, of the OEM, so the manufacturers, of member states. So on the price of spare parts, we really banged our heads in trying to understand what we could do via eco-design. And what it is present in the text, it's not totally, let's say, void, the text on this, because we have the obligation to provide the indicative pre-tax price of the spare parts. Well, it can be a starting point, because as you see, there was also a question here, but what about the risk that one was then obliging the manufacturer to keep the same price for a number of years? We were exactly facing these comments. That's why we came with, for instance, this indicative list. Same for serialization. Yes, perhaps the final text in the regulation is not perfect. Let's not forget from where we were starting. We were starting from a situation on the market that I understood, also having spoken with some repairers, where repair operations of serialized parts were not possible at all, or were possible possibly with risks of infringing the law. So at least we have made, at least in our view, an obligation to for the manufacturer to make the tools available. And in any case, please consider that the regulation will undergo a review in 4 years. So again, that will be, and it's explicitly mentioned, we will assess the possibility of even banning serialization. Thanks for those mentioning the already positive effects. Just closing with 2 points. Yes, like Tia was mentioning, there can be manufacturers that, for instance, are already working on devices that are both durable and repairable. Well, the way in which we thought it could be rewarded is the fact that with the repair index, which again will be present on the label, these products will be shining. And let's not forget that for the label, we have the April database, which since a few months is publicly available. People will have the possibility to go on that database and filter products below or under a certain value of the repair class, and similarly for the other parameters. So we really think that this will be a tool as powerful as eco-design. And yes, I mean, despite I'm personally a great supporter of eco-design and energy labeling, it's not the panacea for everything. And there has also to be the other tools like the consumer legislation. Obviously, eco-design applies to products at the moment of the placing on the market, cannot apply retroactively. Finally, towards the list of spare parts. We had endless discussions. Again, the final approach of having 2 sets, one more limited for end users, a more extended one for professional repairers, we thought it was, let's say, due taking into account the issues brought by the OEM. So again, this is the result of all the process that we went through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davide. I will maybe, we have already reaching the end of allocated time for this webinar, but I wanted to maybe ask one question, which which is again actually about the price of spare parts, which comes very often in the Q&A. So if it's not possible to set spare parts price, actually, what you think is best legislative tool? How can we reduce the price of spare parts, maybe with other techniques than setting price thresholds? Maybe let's. Who wants to react to that? Yeah, you go.
Yeah, I think Claire already hinted at this earlier. The main thing we can do is to avoid competition blockers. So we need to make sure, and that can be done as part of the Right to Repair initiative that's currently in Parliament. And so this is a message to the councils of member states to keep this in mind in the next rounds of negotiations and in defining your position. The only way with this text that we can contribute to making repair more affordable is removing all barriers to professional repairers as well as community repair initiatives and individuals using compatible spare parts made by third parties, which clearly want to compete with manufacturers. So we'll have an interest in coming up with more affordable parts, as well as not preventing the use of reused parts. So if we remove the potential for parts pairing to block this reuse or use of other sources of parts, we already create more of a competitive environment.
Claire?
Just a quick add-on to that. Most definitely, I think we also need to look seriously at bundles and assemblies, and the fact that a lot of critical parts are today made available in bundles, meaning that not only do we have to spend more to acquire what we need, but also there's a risk of actually, while we are trying to separate the two components that we need, something might happen in that process, which means we might break an element and that is just not usable anymore. So, and that I truly appreciate the effort of the Commission in trying to address the issue of bundles, because that's something that has pushed prices up, and we're trying to definitely work on a more case-by-case and individual components level.
Thank you very much, Claire. Thea, I see your mic is on. Maybe you also wanted to react, or okay, no, that was just left on. Okay, so I have to close this webinar. We're already ahead of time. Thank you for those who stayed a bit longer than planned, and sorry for not having been able to go through all the questions. We will note them down and maybe give the opportunity to the speakers, if they have time, or ourselves, we will try to get back to these questions later. But before closing, I need to thank you all, the guests. Thank you for having participated in this webinar. To the audience, of course, for having stayed with us. Special thanks also to the interpreters who helped our German audience follow this webinar. I also want to thank Umweltbundesamt for the financial support they give us and for making it possible to have this webinar, and also Joao and Alison, who supported me for the organization of this webinar. So thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.